Inside Out is a film that masterfully portrays the complexities of the human mind in a way that is simple and yet somewhat accurate. While doing so, it also told the story of how a child adapts to a major change in their life, both from within the mindscape and from the outside. And it pulls it off in a way that leaves an emotional mark on its audience. Inside Out 2 continues to do that with a new set of changes for Riley to adapt, a new adventure for the emotions to go through, and more psychological metaphors to tie the whole film together. I've already given most of my general thoughts on the sequel in the previous video, but after posting it, I realized there was one thing about the film that I forgot to mention. This scene right here, where anxiety controls Imagination Land to envision worst case scenarios for Riley, turns out to be one of the best and arguably most important scenes Pixar has made for its movies. On the surface, it just looks like a clever illustration of how people's anxiety can use their imagination against them, which prevents them from falling asleep. And to be fair, it is that. But the meaning of this scene goes beyond just being a metaphor for anxiety causing sleep deprivation. It's actually the animator's way of expressing how it is to work for major companies like Disney. It essentially calls out the borderline exploitative nature of working in the animation industry. Now, how could people working within a major company like Disney call out the exploitation? Well, Pixar got away with it by basically turning the scene into a pop culture reference. The visuals of the scene, from the large screen showing anxiety, to the mind police, to the controlled population of mind workers, to the rebellious worker throwing a chair to the giant screen, all of that is a reference to Apple's iconic 1984 ad. For those who don't know what that ad was, the original ad was supposed to promote Apple's then new Macintosh computer, and they did it by, funny enough, referencing 1984, the book written by George Orwell. That story is a whole can of worms that I don't have time to go into detail, but basically, both the book and the ad call out the dangers of what happens when a single entity has total control over a population. Long story short, the future becomes very dystopian. The book 1984 called out totalitarian governments like the Soviet Union, while Apple's ad called out computer giants, specifically IBM, which had near total control over the PC industry at the time. Admittingly, kind of ironic looking back in hindsight considering how much wealth and power Apple has today. But irony aside, it was a great ad that has been referenced time and time again, even by Apple's own competitors. Pixar is now part of that list of companies to make this reference within Inside Out 2, which is especially fitting given that Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, also co-founded Pixar. The homage to 1984 goes beyond just being a visual Easter egg. The whole scene's narrative is also an homage to the original story and message. Anxiety represents the totalitarian force that has complete control over everything, while joy represents the rebellious force that encourages everyone to seek freedom. Keep this in mind later on. Okay, so yeah, Pixar made a reference to a popular ad made by one of its sibling companies. But how is this a critique against their parent company, Disney? Well, in this scene, anxiety was forcing the mind workers to make drawings, specifically storyboards, to illustrate nightmare scenarios to Riley. In the real-world context, it's Disney and basically most big media companies that have been doing this. They have been that totalitarian force screwing over animators for the past several years. Company policies have resulted in lower than deserved pay for animators and longer work hours, all in an effort to have a movie ready by a near impossible deadline. Company executives have also been meddling with many of these projects, causing many of these stories to become altered from the vision of the creators. They're doing all of this while also gaslighting their own workers that they're being fairly compensated, which definitely explains why a lot of people in Hollywood went on strike last year. This policy of squeezing the most out of your workers' creativity is partly to blame for the diminishing quality of a lot of films over the past few years. For example, nowadays, people compare the CGI of today and says it looks worse than how it did 10 years ago. Yeah, that's partly due to workers being exploited in that specific field. Oh, and don't get me started towards the disrespect many of these companies had towards their smaller animated projects like their TV shows, for example. I mean, I made multiple videos now calling out Disney and how they mistreated their animated shows, from crappy release schedules to unexpected delays to outright cancellation of some of their amazing shows. These shows were adored by so many people, and yet they were never given the chance to show their true potential, either due to unreasonable expectations set through Disney Plus, or just the lack of marketing from these companies. In a way, it's not surprising that Pixar made this critique against Disney and the industry as a whole, considering they have been screwed over by them in recent years. Their films, Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, were unfortunately never given a theatrical release, at least until recently, which made them look like failures in the eyes of Disney, thus giving the company an excuse to throw these movies under the bus, claiming these films failed for being too personal. Again, quite ironic considering that Inside Out, both the original and the sequel, is based on personal experience from the director. The inclusion of this scene in Inside Out 2 just goes to show the mindset of the people who worked on the film. People in the animation industry are just not happy with its current state, and they want to see changes like more creative freedom and less meddling from executives over their projects. Fortunately, the people who made Inside Out 2 likely had more creative freedom when making this film compared to other Disney films, which would explain a lot of the creative details included in this movie. But odds are, people who worked on movies like Wish, for example, probably didn't have that same creative freedom, which would explain why the movie got the mixed reviews it deserved. So when people are given the chance to express their grievances towards their job through the work they do, they will definitely seize that opportunity, even if it does bite the hand that feeds them. Of course, the ultimate irony of this scene is that it's in a movie that is going to make a boatload of money for Disney when things are all said and done. But in a way, the fact that this scene is included in a movie that millions of people will see strengthens the animators' cause for better conditions while at their jobs. Disney wins regardless if they give creators more freedom to do what they'd like for their films. Therefore, it's in their best interest, and for everyone, if they follow what Anxiety did. Just let go. But those are just my thoughts. Overall, I'm really glad that Pixar included this scene for people to interpret it in the way they wanted. What did you guys think of this scene? Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments below, and please give this video a like, and subscribe for more content like this. With all that being said, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all have a great day. See you in the next one.